Welcome back, everybody. As I said in the last video, this time I do promise we're gonna look at some code and get our hands dirty a little bit. So this video here is going to be a quick look at the languages that we've discussed over the last couple of lessons. We're going to look at PHP, JavaScript, XML, JSON, and Mysql. I only have one extra slide here to put in this video here, and it's very, very important. I cannot stress this enough. I've actually had developers who I've interviewed for contract work who I've asked specifically for JavaScript developers and their Java developers, and think that it's the same thing. So JavaScript is not Java. I believe that term was just pretty popular at the time, and the both technologies coined it. Java is a programming language, and it's used more recently for things like developing Android apps and such. JavaScript is a web technology. Java is also used for the web, but just remember, JavaScript is not Java. So if you followed along with the last video, you should have your server environment set up, whether it be remote or local on your computer. So we'll assume, hopefully, that that's all ready to go. So what we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do is take a look at some PHP. So I've got this file here that's pretty much just a simple web page, all HTML here. We're going to stick to just code view here, and the first thing to note is that it does have a .php extension. Really all that means is that the server is going to recognize that it's a PHP document and that it has PHP in it. So instead of .html like you're normally used to, when .php is loaded, when a page with .php extension is loaded, the server says, "Oh, hey, this is PHP. Let's read it as PHP." If you try to load PHP within an HTML document, you're going to have some issues. Now, with that in mind, it's important to know that when making a PHP document, the extension is really the only difference between an HTML document. The PHP document, you can have as much HTML in it as you want. It works just the same as an HTML document. That's very important to know. In fact, you don't even have to have any PHP in it. It will still work. So, for instance, this page will still work as it stands right now with no PHP. The only difference is that having that extension allows you to use PHP. And at the very basic level, we need to know how we can put PHP in here. And what you need to do is we're going to enclose it in these PHP tags. So here on line 1, this is your opening tag. In line 6 here is your closing tag. Now I only put them 6 lines apart just to give us some space. And in this PHP block, we'll call it, you can have a single statement, or you can have multiple statements, and this will make sense further down the road. An example of a statement here is we can define a variable. So let's say we want to make a variable that's going to hold my age. So we're going to call it my age, and we're going to get more into what I'm doing here at a later time. So don't worry if you're getting lost by this. Just this is just more of an example of kind of what PHP looks like and how it's put in here. So we're going to say my page, or my age, is equal to 31. And then we close the statement here with a semicolon, much like in CSS. So this would be considered one statement. And as I said, in this PHP block here, we can have more than one statement. So I could also say my name equals Alan. So now we have two statements in this PHP block. The next thing that's important to know is that you can have as many blocks of PHP within your code as you want. They don't need to just be at the top here. You can insert them all over the place. I mean, we could actually insert the PHP tags here, right here in our page title, and we could run a single statement. This time we'll use what's called an echo statement, and what this will do is spit out whatever the value is, or whatever we put here in these parentheses. So let's actually just take out page title here, and we'll say my first PHP page, and we're going to save this. So here in our web browser, I have pulled up the page we were working on here, which if you didn't notice, and I'm sorry for not bringing it up, I just called it php.js.php, and reason being I'm going to show you PHP and JavaScript here within this same page. So you can name it whatever you want as long as it's .php and not .html. And I'll also note here that I am running this on a local server here on my network. I'm not running it with my hosting service. So that explains the IP address in my address bar. So with that said, let's see what happened here. The page itself is blank. Obviously, if you flip back to Dreamweaver, there's no content here. We have an empty body. We really just have a title. And you'll see what happened here is we said echo and then my first page, and that's what happened here. Now this is an example that really probably doesn't make a lot of sense. You're thinking, why would I want to write this extra stuff here when I can just pretty much put in my first PHP page within the title tags? That's a valid question. But you'll understand why PHP is important and why you do these extra steps, like using the echo command here. Further on into our lessons. So at this point, we want to remember that PHP has to be written within the PHP tags. The document has to have a PHP extension .php, and that you can have multiple PHP blocks throughout your page. And what I mean by a PHP block is a set of PHP tags and statements within them. The last thing to remember is that you can have more than one statement. You can have one statement, or you can have several statements within your PHP blocks. There are some limitations and restrictions as to what can run where, but at this point that's not important to know. So next, let's look at a little JavaScript here. Like PHP, JavaScript can be placed throughout the page. Where it runs, though, is a little more important with JavaScript than it is with PHP, which we'll explain a little later. A lot of times you're going to see JavaScript being run within the head tags. So basically, before anything in the body loads, the JavaScript's going to load. And similar to PHP, we need to encapsulate the JavaScript within some tags here. So we'll do a script tag. And this should work at its very basic here, but normally you're going to want to put in the type, which is text JavaScript. It's just proper. So within the JavaScript here, we can, just like in PHP, run a simple statement or multiple statements. And just for to make things easier, what I'm going to do is pretty much the same thing I did up above in PHP, only using JavaScript this time. I'm going to set two variables, and you'll see that the syntax is a little different, which does become kind of a hurdle when learning. We're going to need to learn two different languages here, but the concepts are always the same. So in order to do a variable here, we need to declare that we're going to make a variable, and we're going to call it my age, and we'll say equals 31. So you can see some similarities here. One of the major differences is how we declare that this is going to be a variable. In PHP, by placing the $sign behind or first, is telling PHP, hey, this is going to be a variable. Whereas in JavaScript, they want to have the var keyword, or var for variable, and then space, and then the variable itself. So you can definitely see some similarities here. It's also important to notice that, or to note that, these are two separate variables here. My age in PHP and my age in JavaScript are two totally separate things. They do not interact with each other necessarily. If I were to change this to 32, that doesn't change the variable in PHP. That will still be 31. And just for consistency, let's go ahead and set up my name to so you're probably already seeing some similarities or familiar things here, especially with CSS. You're seeing that your statements here are being closed or ended with a semicolon before you move on to the next line, just like you do in PHP, or in CSS. Another thing you're going to see a lot of use of are curly brackets for kind of encapsulating certain blocks of code. But moving on, we would be, I think, in violation of the web gods here if we don't do the standard hello world example. So let's not make the web development gods mad here. So what we'll do is, we'll go ahead and take this opportunity to teach you. So let's first, we're going to declare a variable, and we'll call this one message. And make some double quotes here, which there is a difference between the double and single quotes. We'll get into that later, but at this point, just make sure that if you're using one or the other to make it consistent, it has to start with a double and end with a double, or start with a single and end with a single. But anyway, so let's make our message here hello world. As far as terms go, this by putting these words here or text within the quotations, this is considered a string. So when you're learning further, reading about PHP and such, when you see the term string, this is what you should think of, as opposed to an integer or a number like 31. This is considered a string of text, so to speak. So just remember that in the back of your head. So now we've set our variable message to hold the value of hello world. And let's go ahead and we'll run another echo statement, but this time instead of putting text within the parentheses, or sorry, text within the quotes, we're going to just simply echo message. And what this is going to do is it's going to kind of spit out to the browser the value of message. It's important to remember that it's the value of it. It is not message. So when we load the page here, it's not going to just print out message. It's going to print out the value of message. So if we save this and upload it if you're working on a remote server, and let's pull up our page here and refresh, and there we go, hello world. So what happened was we set the variable message to equal hello world, which is a string, and then afterwards we echoed out or printed the value of message to the screen or to the browser, and we did this within the body tags. So that's that. That's, you know, a quick look at just PHP and JavaScript and what they look like. So next time we, you know, start working in this, you kind of know what to look for and know what you're looking at. So really quick before we move on to getting back into our project, we're going to look at a couple other languages. The first being XML, which, and this is an example of an XML document, albeit it's very simple. One way I like to describe XML to people who don't understand it, it's kind of like having a very simple database. Its purpose is to store data that can be retrieved. Generally, we don't hard code values in like this. You might have a purpose too, but for larger projects, say for instance, right here it looks like maybe we have, this is kind of a contact list. We have Alan and John, and maybe we want to put our phone numbers in there as well or something. That's not necessarily a good task for XML. If you're going to do something like that, you might want to store it in like a MySQL database or something. However, we use XML a lot of times in conjunction with MySQL. We take the information from MySQL and generate an XML document which is easily read from other languages. I know that sounds kind of confusing and like a bunch of extra steps, but I just wanted to throw that out there for now, and we'll get to understanding that a little bit later. So just know that just because you're using a database like MySQL, that it doesn't make XML obsolete. It doesn't. There's a good chance you might actually use XML, especially when working with JavaScript, because JavaScript as a client-side language cannot communicate with PHP and MySQL because they're housed in two totally separate areas. There's ways to kind of get information passed between the two, but they do not by default can communicate with each other, and XML is one of those ways that we can kind of pass information between the two. Another language is, and I don't even know if these are really considered languages. I'm sure somebody would correct me with the proper term, but XML and JSON are pretty similar. They both are meant to hold information. One major difference that you're going to notice right away here when I open up this JSON document is that it's not as pretty as XML. XML is definitely set up with clarity in mind, we'll say. Opening up an XML document, you can really quickly normally see values and kind of how the structure is set up. JSON, to the contrary, is generally all inline like this, and the values are, you know, squished together. It's very hard to read as a human, but the computer reads it just fine. But you'll see some similarities here. This is actually pulled from the Twitter API. doing a query for my company Think Revision. So don't really concern yourself with the names and stuff here, but just realize that, look, we have an item here, and then we have its value, similar to XML where we have name and its value, item value, item value. But yeah, this is very hard to read, even to the trained eye. But JavaScript and JSON go really, really well together. Not to mention JSON saves space and reading time, because the documents are generally a little bit smaller and sometimes a lot smaller. You may not notice it or realize it, but all these white spaces here, which this would be considered white space, you may think that that doesn't count as far as the size of the document, but it still does. The document still has to know there's white space there. So something has to be stored there in order to tell whatever you're opening the page in that white space needs to be there. So in essence, you're creating a larger file, and if you've got a really big XML file with a ton of records, that's just a lot of white space. And you'll see here in JSON we don't really have much white space, and in this one we don't have any at all in between the values and items. So you could see in a very large document how much white space you're cutting out. There's more to both of these, but I wanted to kind of show you so that you can have an idea roughly in your mind what the syntax looks like. Because once we start working with all these different technologies and languages, it can be very easy to have them kind of jumble up and mesh together. So lastly, before we in this lesson, we're going to look at MySQL, which in order to show you it, I'm actually just going to have an empty document here. I did choose PHP from the create menu, but I haven't saved it yet, so it's not technically a PHP file. It's just an empty text document. And this is not how we run MySQL. What I'm about to put in here will not do anything necessarily. I just want to give you an idea of the syntax a little bit. MySQL is definitely written with the user in mind, or the developer in mind. It's one of the more easier to read and write syntaxes out there in the programming world. A lot of it's just very obvious. So let's say we have a database that has a bunch of contacts in it, just like your phone has your contact list. So we'd be assuming that in this database there would be a table which houses all these records, and these records have fields: name, phone number, email, etc. Now if you're not familiar with databases yet, this might still be a little confusing to you, but just try to follow along. So when writing MySQL, let's say we want to write a query, which this is called a query, that retrieves all of our contacts, and we just want to retrieve their name. So we write something like this: select name, which name would be the field name, similar to the XML here, name. So select name from contacts, and we're going to say that our table in our database is called contacts. And essentially that's all we need. This is going to run a very basic query. It's going to select name, which is the name field, so technically it would select the value, from the database from the table. So what it's going to do at this very basic level is look at the database, find the contacts table, and grab the name of every contact. And the reason why it's going to get every contact is because we're not telling it to do anything other than that. We're not giving it any rules or conditions. We could do something like where name equals Alan. And now we've given it a condition to kind of filter or narrow down the results given to us. So now we can pull only the records from the table whose name is Alan. And furthermore, we can sort these results should we need to. If we have a lot of results and we want to sort them, we can say order by name, and then we want to tell it how to order it, either ascending or descending, and we'll say descending. And in this sense, what it would do is it would be ordering alphabetically by name, and in this case would be kind of dumb, since we're only pulling the records whose name is Alan, so it really isn't going to be ordered. So let's go ahead and take this condition out here. So now we're just select the name field from the contacts table and order it by name. So this would pull every record in the contacts table and spit out their name, and it would be in the order alphabetically by name. And since we chose descending, however, it's going to go backwards, so it would start with anybody with a name starting with the letter Z and display it from there that way. If we chose ascending, it would show records starting with A, and so on. And that's kind of the normal view that most people would be used to looking at. Now, like I said, we can't really do anything with this. I can't save this document and upload it and do anything. I really just wanted to show you the syntax. When doing MySQL, we're gonna be running it in various different places, which will make sense further down the road. But I just wanted to give you an idea of what to look out for. So, like I said, we've got 5 different languages we're going to learn here in the next videos, and it's just kind of good to have a rough idea of what they look like, so you can kind of pinpoint them when we're looking at our documents. You may not know what everything is doing, but you can at least say, oh, that's that's JavaScript there, and that's MySQL, and that's JSON. And maybe what I'll do is package this up so that you guys can kind of have a reference handy when working on this and other projects. So that concludes our little intro into the languages. From here on out, or at least after this video, we're going to actually start working on our project. We're going to pull the website that we made in the very beginning. Let me pull that up here. Which this should look familiar if you started with us from lesson 1 or part 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to take what we've done here, and we're going to first start out with PHP. Contrary to what I just did, I'm not going to throw all these languages at you at once. We are going to work on them all in this series, but I'm going to try and take it one step at a time to not confuse people. So we'll first use PHP, and what we're going to do with PHP is we're going to build what we would call a template. And I've alluded to this in previous lessons. A template allows us to have areas that are static, such as the navigation up here, or you might call it the main menu. Items on the page that are going to stay consistent throughout every page. And by using the template idea, we can kind of house that in one location rather than having 30 different pages on our website, each of them having a copy of this header here with the navigation. Anytime we want to make a change, we'd have to go through all 30 of those documents and come in and change whatever we need to do. Whereas what we're going to do with PHP is we're going to make it so we only have one document that we need to change, and that'll go affect all the other pages across the board. So definitely get your thinking caps on for these next lessons. I'm going to try and get to them sometime this week.